Hello people, I'm the Real Comic Book Gamer. Today I'm going to be talking about my top 10 favorite Superman graphic novels of all time. Now, graphic novels for me, the description I'm using for that is basically when you go into a bookstore like Barnes & Noble and they just have all the trades and hardcovers over there and it's in the graphic novels section, because I know some people have gotten on me for my definition of graphic novel, but that's my definition. That's what I use. So a trade paperback, just collecting a bunch of issues, is a graphic novel to me. So yeah, there's my definition there, because some people occasionally get on me for my definition, but I don't really care. So that's what, just letting you guys know. Also, some Superman Rebirth books could make it into this list eventually, but right now I feel like I haven't had enough time to really sit on them and think. So that's why there's no DC Rebirth books in here. But some Superman Rebirth books have been really good, so they could maybe make it in the top 10 eventually. But right now I haven't had enough time to really stew and like sit and think about them, so I wouldn't really say that I have one in my top 10 yet. But maybe eventually, like years to come, I'll learn to appreciate them more and they might make it the top 10. So anyways, let's get into it. Starting off at number 10 is Superman Ending Battle, which is a great book. It's written by multiple people. It's sort of like Superman's Nightfall, except not near as long, but Superman gets run through the gauntlet. He goes through so much of his rogues gallery. There's even a fight where he goes against like Silver Banshee, Mongol, and Bizarro, and all at the same time, and some others, and yeah, he goes through a lot of different people, and then in the end, we see Manchester Black is there, and a lot of crazy stuff happens. I don't really want to spoil too much here, but it is a really good action-packed, fun book that I love, and I definitely suggest anyone to read that just loves like action-packed, fun books, because that's what it is, and it's really well done. And like I said, it's basically Superman's Nightfall is how I'd say, because he goes through so many of his own villains, like in Nightfall when Batman's villains gets broken out of prison. He's got to put them all back in prison. That's sort of what happens here, where there's just so many villains going after Superman. We also get a badass moment with Jonathan Kent in here that I love, but yeah, definitely check it out. At number 9, we have Superman Brainiac, which is from my favorite creative team, Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. These guys are fantastic, and anything they ever go on is just superb. They're just a great creative team. I love Gary Frank's art, and of course, how could you not like Jeff Johns' writing? So this book was sort of reintroducing Brainiac, and they did a great job of doing it, and Gary Frank's art really brings Brainiac to life and even makes him kind of creepy in some parts, which, you generally don't think about with Brainiac. And we see the terror in Supergirl's eyes when we see that Brainiac is coming back, because she was there on Krypton when Kandor got bottled up by Brainiac, and we even get to see that event happen in this book. We get to see the failure of Krypton, where just one of their cities, Kandor, their capital, gets bottled up and taken. There's nothing they can do, and it's kind of a horrific event, and it's done really well. It's sort of like their 9/11 is what I'd say. It's like Krypton's 9/11. Just this horrible, terrible event happens where their capital gets taken from them, and they don't know what happened to those people. Just loved ones are separated from each other, and it's terrible. And it's recreated in this book, and it's done really well. And then that's where we get to see why Supergirl is so like traumatized by Brainiac. She's got like PTSD when she sees Brainiac or any of his robots. She's just like freaking out. We get to see Superman take on Brainiac, and it's interesting how he takes him down, because this is one of those guys that he's not able to just take him down purely with his fists. He has to outsmart Brainiac to take him out. He has to think outside the box, and it's just a really good book. The movie sadly didn't do it justice, but the book is really good. At number 8, I've got Superman the Man of Steel Volume 1, which was the beginning of John Byrne's run on Superman, where he was basically told to reinvent the character, where they sort of rebooted Superman. And that's a tall order for anyone to reinvent a character that everyone loves, but he did it. He did a great job of refining the character and showing us what we really love about Superman. The only really drawbacks I have from John Byrne's run is his Lex is a little iffy sometimes. I like his Lex, other times I'm like, that's not really that great. But this volume is really well done. I love the first volume. Most of his run is great, but the first volume is probably my favorite. We get to see Superman's first meeting with Batman. We get to see the first time he meets Lois Lane and how he gets his job at the Daily Planet. We get to see him messing with Lois Lane and things, because him as Superman gives an interview to Lois, and then when Lois goes to Perry, she's like, hey, I got an interview with Superman. He's like, yeah, this Clark dude already got an interview, got an exclusive with Superman, and it's great. We also get to see some really cool stuff on Krypton, some stuff that inspired Krypton and Man of Steel, and John Byrne sort of revolutionized the character of Superman, and there's a lot of great moments in here, and I think every Superman fan should read it. At number 7 is The Death of Superman. Now, I see this as very mixed. Some people think it's incredibly overrated. Some people think it's fantastic and it's possibly the best Superman book of all time. I think it's really good, and I think it does kind of get underrated actually, because I see a lot of people saying, oh, it's incredibly overrated, but I think it was done really well, and I love what Dan Jurgens did with this book, and the art is amazing in this book, and it's really emotional when Superman does die. I think it's it's my favorite death in comics. I think it's really well handled. The way that when Superman dies, when him and Doomsday punch each other at the end, and you see Lois there just crying, and Jimmy Olsen's in the back, and it's just, man, it's intense. It's really impactful. I remember first reading this, like, feeling so emotional reading this, seeing my favorite superhero die. It's really intense. And you see, prior to Superman even coming into the scene of the book, Doomsday's just destroying everything, like messing up this Justice League. This was like B Team Justice League, but still he messes them up, and he messes up the Justice League plenty later on in the DC universe. But in this, he just messed up B Team Justice League, and it's only Superman that can stop him. And we even get a great moment where in the middle of Superman fighting, there's this family that's just about to die because their house is coming down around them because of what happened with Doomsday, and Superman's able to fly off from Doomsday and save that family and then go back to Doomsday. And we see a lot of cool moments like that. It's just great seeing this unstoppable force that only Superman can stop, but he can only stop him by giving his life. And just, yeah, I love the art in this book, and Dan Jurgens is at the top of his game, and it is a really well done book. At number 6, we have Superman and the Legion of Superheroes. Now, this is a great book that I've mentioned many a times because it is one of the darkest Superman stories, because what happens is Superman goes to the future with the Legion of Superheroes, 'cause that's where they're from if you don't know who they are. They're sort of like the Justice League of the future-ish. That's sort of who they are. They're like way in the future, and so aliens and everything are relevant. Like, aliens are everywhere, and just, yeah, it's big time future stuff. So in the future, there's this guy called Earthman, who's basically future Hitler. He comes around and he says, he just does all this propaganda saying that Superman was actually a human and the aliens lied and said he was Kryptonian, but he was actually human, and he hated aliens. And so it makes everyone incredibly xenophobic, because in the future Superman seen as like this basically perfect guy that always did the right thing, and so they use him. They don't necessarily worship him, but he is very looked upon, sort of like one of the forefathers of the future, like that just everyone really looks up to Superman. And so when they say, oh man, this guy that was so great hated aliens and all this stuff was wrong, and it turns out he is from the Earth, yeah, we should listen to this Earthman guy. So he uses it to just make everything incredibly xenophobic and try to just commit genocide upon aliens, and he's future Hitler, and he's just committing genocide on aliens in the name of Superman. So I'd say that's one of the darkest Superman books I've ever read, and Superman comes to the future, and he's got no powers during most of this because the sun is red, so he's got no powers during most of it, but we get some great moments between Superman and Legion of Superheroes and seeing Superman fight, and then in the end he does get his powers, and it's just a great book, and it's done by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank. Like I said, pretty much anytime they team up, they make a fantastic book, so yeah, you should definitely read it. At number 5, I've got All-Star Superman. Now, I know a lot of people rank this in their probably top 2 at least. Most people consider this the best Superman book of all time. It is really good. It's a great book. Grant Morrison hit it out of the park with it, but I don't think it's the best Superman book. The art's pretty good for the most part. I'm kind of 50-50 on some of Frank Quitely stuff, or Quitely, or however you say his name. He does some great stuff, and then there's some stuff where it's like, that looks a little weird, but yeah, this book is really good. It's a pretty big book, and I love it. There's not much I have to say about it, because most people know about it, even when you're just not even talking about Superman, just like the best graphic novels of all time. All-Star Superman gets brought up because it's that good. It has, Grant Morrison writes possibly my favorite Lex Luthor in this book. He is so well done. I love the way Lex is written. I love the way Superman's written for the most part, and it's just really good. There's not much I have to say about a lot of like that people haven't already said. A lot of stuff happens in this book. Setup is basically, in the beginning, Superman gets overdosed on solar radiation, which is, you know, what gives him his powers, and so that gives him a set time to live. So Superman decides, okay, here's all the stuff I want to do before I die, and so he goes throughout the book trying to do those things, and Lex is up to his own plan and schemes, and that's the setup for the book. And if you haven't read it, I don't know what you're doing. This isn't just Superman fans. Every comic book fan should read this. It's that good. At number 4, I've got Superman American Alien. I know some people will, like, after All-Star Superman, be like, wait, you put that book up ahead of All-Star Superman? You put that book, especially with American Alien, because it is so new. But I had to say it, I love American Alien. It's one of my favorite Superman books. It's number 4, and I do like it better than All-Star Superman. There was a lot of hype coming behind this because Max Landis is a huge Superman fan, and he's always talked about Superman, how much he loved him, so we were waiting to see what he could do if he actually wrote the character. And he did a just amazing job. This book is superb. I love the fact that with each issue we get a different artist, which is great, and it was just so well done. It's just different points in Clark's life that were pivotal moments for him. So we get one when he's like really young, when he's like teenager, when he's young adult, like things like that. It just goes throughout his span until we get to like where he's actually Superman. We get some amazing moments. We get to see his first interaction with Dick Grayson and a small interaction with Batman, but his interaction with Dick Grayson is great. The way Max Landis writes Lex Luthor, I can't wait to see him write more Lex Luthor. That's what I need to see. That was the thing that I wanted most after reading this book, was I need to see more of Max Landis as Lex Luthor, because he's not in it much, but when he is in it, he's a page stealer. You just like, he is what you're concentrating on. He is fantastic. I love Max Landis' Lex Luthor. The way he writes him, his monologues are just great. And again, the art is great in this book. I love how you have a bunch of different great guys doing art in this book. You have guys like Jock and Francis Manapul and just, oh my gosh, so many great artists, and Max Landis nails it. There are some things where I have complaints, but overall, I really enjoyed it, and yeah, it's a great read. I would say this is probably the book that I'd recommend to someone who's like, Superman looks okay, I guess I'll try to read him. What would you recommend? American Alien would be it. That would be the book where I'd be like, okay, you should probably start on American Alien if you're kind of iffy on Superman and you want to read and see if you really like the character or not. American Alien is what I would suggest. At number 3, I've got Superman Last Son, which is written by Jeff Johns and Richard Donner, and the art is done by Adam Kubert, and it's a really good read. The setup for this is a kid comes down to Earth that is Kryptonian, and we don't find out till later that he is Zod's son. So Superman and Lois adopt him as their own, and they raise him as their own. And then Zod comes back for his son, and all hell breaks loose, and we get to see Superman and Lex teaming up, which this was before Lex was a good guy like he is in the current Rebirth stuff, which I'm not a big fan of, but this was when they teamed up because Zod was the bigger alien threat, so they had to team up, and it's great seeing Lex just systematically destroy some Kryptonians, because you see how much Superman has to put up with, how great he truly is to be able to deal with Lex, because just a normal Kryptonian gets absolutely decimated by Lex, just destroyed, and I love it. And it's just, I love seeing this Lex and Superman team up, and the art is pretty good. Just, yeah, Jeff Johns and Richard Donner completely nail Superman in this, and this was before Rebirth, so Lois and Clark couldn't have a kid, so this was their first shot at actually having a kid by adopting this Kryptonian. It's just really well done, and I love this book. At number 2 is Superman Secret Origin, which is, in my opinion, the best Superman origin book on the planet. It is so well done. It's done by Jeff Johns and Gary Frank, who you guys have heard a lot of during this list. It's because I love those guys so much. And I know I said before in a previous video that Legion of Superheroes is probably my favorite Gary Frank work, but no, after going through all these again, I would say Secret Origin is probably where Gary Frank was at the top of his game. He's always great, but I would say this is where he's at the top of his game, and it is such a good book. We get so many great moments with Clark and him growing up. We get to see Lex growing up in Smallville with Clark and what sort of started them not liking each other too much. We get to see some moments that actually inspired Man of Steel, like the whole "I just want to be your son, you are my son." That moment was ripped straight out of Secret Origin, and you see where Clark is coming from, what he had to deal with growing up being a pretty much a complete loner because of the fact that there was no kid really like him, and see him come to terms with how he's Kryptonian, but he feels more human, and we get to see him take on some classic villains like Metallo and Parasite and Lex Luthor. I love the way Lex is written in this book, and just, yeah, classic Superman book. Highly recommend it. My favorite Superman origin book. My favorite Superman graphic novel of all time that I think is incredibly underrated and I hardly ever see brought up is Superman Up and Away. It's written by Jeff Johns and Kurt Busiek, and just, man, is this great. Kurt Busiek never really recaptured this Superman in any of his other books, so I feel like this was more of a Jeff Johns Superman than Kurt Busiek, but they both wrote it, so they both deserve credit. They both did a great job, and the art for the most part is done by Pete Woods, but there's also some by Renato Gutierrez, I think that's how you pronounce his name. I think that's the guy who does the other art, but the Pete Woods art is fantastic. The other guy, I'm not the biggest fan of his art, but Pete Woods did a great job, and he nails it. And this takes place after Infinite Crisis. If you don't know what happened in Infinite Crisis, basically in the end, Superman was fighting Superboy Prime. They fly through a red sun, through a kryptonite asteroid field, and then they beat each other with kryptonite. So through all of that happened, Superman lost his powers for a year, and we see that when this book picks up, it's a year later. Superman still doesn't have his powers. Lex just got out of prison. There's a lot of stuff. It's very much a Superman and Lex Luthor story, because we see that Lex just got out of prison, and he comes back and he gets kicked out of his own company by his board, because they say, yeah, this guy's known as a criminal. He's not good for our appearance. We're gonna get rid of him. But yeah, you don't exactly get rid of Lex Luthor, so he goes back to his normal schemes and things, and we get some great moments with Clark here, because most of the book, he's just Clark. And we even see a part where Green Lantern gives him a ring. Green Lantern gives him a ring because it's like, hey, we see you want to be back in the game, and he takes the ring, and when the ring, like, you know, puts the green field around him and everything, it's just an outer layer of Clark. Because they talk about it later to where Lois is like, if you truly saw yourself as Superman, not Clark, then that green ring would have showed you in a Superman suit with a cape. But no, it showed you as Clark. So it's showing right there that he sees himself as Clark and not Superman, which was a great moment. And we also get to see that during this whole time, Clark has doubled down on reporting. Now that he doesn't have the Superman side of his life, he is the best reporter at the Daily Planet by far. And he's an investigative reporter, and he's causing all these things with Intergang, where he's completely destroying crime in Metropolis by reporting on it and busting people. And it's great. And we get some good moments between him and Jimmy Olsen. We get to see how Jimmy Olsen it sucks that he lost his best friend Superman, and he really wants Superman to be back. We even get a fantastic moment where Superman's getting hit by a kryptonite ray, and Jimmy Olsen takes a trash can lid and runs over and blocks it for him for a second before, you know, he can't really maintain it that well, but that second was all Superman needed. And I just love seeing some Superman Jimmy Olsen like goodness, because we don't get that very much in Rebirth anymore, but I really do love that friendship. And yeah, it's a fantastic book that encompasses all that I love about Superman, and we get a great moment at the end between Lex and Superman. But yeah, you should definitely read it if you're a Superman fan. But if you aren't a Superman fan, I wouldn't really say it's a must read. But if you are, then yes, what are you doing with your life if you haven't read Superman Up and Away? You need to read it. So yeah, that's it. That's my top 10 favorite Superman graphic novels of all time. Please let me know in the comments below, what are your top 10 favorite Superman graphic novels? I want to hear what your guys' favorite stories are from Superman. And yeah, hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you want to see more, subscribe, and I'll see you later.
Yeah, I grew up with the prenup. Mama said keep my C up. Now noticing I'm getting caught cracker and getting beat up, but I stayed up long nights, working hard on my craft. Gave a fuck about the bullies or anyone in my path.